Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Satgurum Brahmavidvaram. Okay, wonderful. So we're going to go today to finish the last two verses of Bhaja Govindam. And then as time permits, we can also do a review of all of the verses. So we'll start right from the verses. We're on verse number 30. Pranayamam pratyaharam.
Pranayamam pratyaharam.
Nitya nitya viveka vicharam.
Nitya nitya viveka vicharam.
Japya samita samadhi vidhanam.
Japya samita samadhi vidhanam.
Purvavadhanam mahadavadhanam.
Purvavadhanam mahadavadhanam.
Pranayamam pratyaharam nitya nitya viveka vicharam japya samita samadhi vidhanam kuruvavadhanam mahadavadhanam bhaja govindam govindam bhaja mudhamete. So the caption for this verse is outside in. Spirituality is only really one thing. It's about drawing all of our focus and energy from the outside to within. That's all that's really required, because everything that we need, a whole powerhouse of strength, of detachment, of love, of bliss, is inside. So the entire spiritual practice is just to withdraw all of our attention and energy from the outside in. And so here, Adi Shankaracharya Ji gives us a beautiful program for physical introversion, mental introversion, and intellectual introversion. How do we bring our energy, our attention within? So first is pranayama. So pranayama, we'll see the meaning of the verse in total, then we'll go one by one. Pranayama means the control of all activities. Pratyahara, the withdrawal of senses from the sense objects. Nitya anitya viveka vicharam, inquiry consisting of the discrimination between permanent and impermanent. Japya samita means along with japa, samadhi vidhanam, and of reaching samadhi, the total absorption of mind. Kuru avadhanam, perform it with great care. Mahat avadhanam, with great care. Bhaja Govindam, seek Govinda. The control of all activities of life's manifestations in you, the sense withdrawal from their respective sense objects, the reflection consisting of discrimination between the permanent and impermanent, along with japa and the practice of reaching the total inner silence samadhi, these perform with care, with great care. So pranayama. Pranayama, we normally understand it to be control of breath. But here, Puja Gurudev in his commentary goes a little bit deeper. See that prana shakti, that pranas, the vital energies, are responsible for all of the activity of the body. So when the prana is down, we can't do anything. We can't move. And when the prana is up, we can do so many things. By controlling activities, what he means here is seeing what we really need to get involved in, right? There's so many things in life. I mean, there's an overstimulation of entertainment, of things, of experiences, of places that we can be involved in. We live in New York City. So pranayama really means in what should we be involved in? And in that particular activity, just do what's required for that activity. So many times we use more than what's required for an activity. A very, very simple example is walking. Walking is pretty easy. But so many times just thump, 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 and we waste unnecessary energy to walk. To walk, there's only this much that you need. To close the door, there's only this much energy that you need, but we slam it. So in life, we do so many unnecessary things, and we do the right things in unnecessary ways. So pranayama really means, what am I involved in? And are these activities enabling me to grow within? Are these physical engagements, activities, enabling me to grow within, to get closer to that truth within? And if they are, engage. And if they are not, then disengage. It's as simple as that. Pratyahara. Pratyahara is now the control of our perceptions. See, the perceptions that we have in life, they can take us out. Something that we see can really take us to so many, many, many places and spaces where we don't want to be. How are we controlling what we see, we hear, we smell, we taste? How are we controlling that? Yes, there are some times in life where we can't control it, because these are things, there are certain things that we see every day, we hear every day because of our environment. That's also very true. Pratyahara means whatever it is that we're seeing or we're hearing or we're smelling or we're tasting, how do we use that to come within? For example, we see nature. We see the green grass. How do we use that to come within? We can think of beauty of silence, or we can think of money because it's green, right? We see the yellow sunrise. We can think of glamour and glitter and gold, or we can think of purity and brilliance. We see a family member and we can think of, wow, some dependence. We can think of relationship, or we can think of love. We can think of love, we can think of peace, we can think of strength. So on one level, it's being able to control the perceptions that we see and monitor them. But on a deeper level, there are some things which we just can't control because they're around us. But how do we use those perceptions to come within? I'll give you one other example. We might think that, okay, we live in New York City. We have to ride the subway. We see so much noise and so many things around us. Gurudev once, he was asked to explain meditation. And he said, this is all it is. Look at the train or look at the subway and watch the gap between the two compartments. That's meditation. It's just watching the gap between your two thoughts. So you can stand in the New York City subway and still go within if we watch the gap between two compartments, two train cars. So that is called pratyahara, that special, unique ability to bring everything in. Whatever it is, bring it in. So in this way, in pranayama and pratyahara, we use physical engagements, objects, sights, sounds to bring us within. Now we go to mental introversion. That is where we use japa. Now we've all studied about japa. Japa is the repetition of the divine name or a mantra. And what happens is our mind is so vast. Even if it's not actively seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, even if our eyes are closed, so many things are going on in our mind. Some people say there's like 60,000 thoughts that go on in our mind in the span of minutes. So what do we do with this mind that's just going all over the place? The answer is japa. Japa has that unique ability to really stay centered on one thought and leave away all extraneous thoughts. And that one thought is not just a thought of a chair or a table or a bottle. It's a thought of something so incredibly divine that even when we say that name or when we think that name, our whole being becomes divinized. That's the power of the name of God. Tulsidas Ji once asks in Ramayana, what is more powerful, the name of God or the form of God? And it's the name of God, because the name of God is all pervading. The form of God we may see in one particular place or space, but the name is really everywhere. So that's the beauty of japa. It can take away all other thoughts in a moment. It can just take away everything else in a moment. And then the beauty of japa is that once we think only of that divinity, all the answers come to us. See, in life, we don't have to go seeking answers. We actually never have to go out and ask, what should we do? Where should we go? How should we do this? We never really have to do that. All we need to do is pray. Some people think that the last resort is prayer, but prayer is actually the strongest resort. Because once we keep our mind in the level of prayer, in the level of japa, what happens is we're able to tune into that universal intelligence. That's what japa or prayer does. We tune into that universal intelligence, and then inevitably everything becomes revealed to us. So we never have to go out and find answers. A spiritual person has the answers revealed to them, and they are instantly guided as to what to do. And that's called the power of intuition. So our rishis, they lived beyond the mental level, beyond the intellectual level. They lived really in that level of intuition. Japa. Japa takes you there. And now, of course, then we have intellectual introversion. So japa can keep the mind on that one single thought. Intellectual introversion, how to keep the intellect centered on truth through vichara. Vichara means inquiry of what's nitya, of what's permanent, and what's anitya, impermanent. So many times we get lost in life not knowing what to do. Bhaja Govindam tells us, always hold on to that which is permanent, right? People will go. Experiences will go. Objects will go. What is permanent is the self, is your true self, your nature. Hold that. Hold that. Everything else will have to go. In its own time, in its own place and space, it will go. So knowing that this is impermanent and this is permanent, what should I root myself in? Root myself in the permanent. And when I root myself in the permanent, what happens? I am able to play with the impermanent. I am able to relish, revel, engage in the impermanent with a sense of detachment. So nobody said we have to run away from life and leave everything that we have. What we're saying is stay rooted in that which is permanent and then engage in the impermanent in a very, very detached spirit. That will give one strength. Attachment makes us break down, but detachment gives us strength and clarity. So nitya, anitya, viveka, vichara, this inquires us to think. Vichara means think. This is something that we don't use all the time. The mind races and races and races, but how many times do we just think? So nitya, anitya, viveka, vichara. All of this then culminates this physical introversion, mental introversion. Physical, pranayama, pratyahara. Mental introversion, japa. Intellectual introversion, vichara. It culminates in samadhi. What does samadhi mean? Samadhi means absorbing the mind in the self. Absorbing the mind in the self means literally being in that space and remaining as you are. That's called samadhi. Just remaining as you are. Just be. Just be is the easiest thing to say, but the hardest thing to do. Because every time we say just be, then some people will ask, well, what do we do now? Well, just be. Just be, right? Just be and remain as you are. That indestructible self. Samadhi vidhana, and that pure awareness. Then he says something here which is so precious. He says, Kuru avadhanam, means do this with great awareness. Why? Because many people say, I've been studying Vedanta, I've been doing all of these spiritual practices, but I'm not seeing changes in my life. Why? Because we're not doing it with attention. We're not doing it with care. People can do this pranayama, controlling activities, and pratyahara, withdrawing the mind, but how many people do it attentively and carefully? People do japa, but how many people really do it carefully? And also thinking, inquiry. How many of us really go deeply into it? It's not the quantity of time that we spend, it's the quality of depth that we invest. We can be with somebody for 2 minutes and give them what they need for a lifetime. This is the beauty of a relationship, a real one. That's what Gurudev did. So it's not the quantity of things that we do or think about. We can go on and busy ourselves with that. But it's the quality of depth that we invest in that moment or with that person, with that being. So many people we meet, they'll say, I just heard these words and it changed my life. It's not the quantity, it was the quality. This person said this to me or did this for me and it changed my life. So, Kuru avadhanam. There was once a young girl and her father had this habit of telling her to repeat whatever was said. So every morning what would happen is the father's neighbor, he would come and he would talk to the father. And the young girl was there. And so after the neighbor would leave, the father would say, now repeat what he said. And so she would repeat everything. And this was an elderly neighbor. She would repeat everything. And every day it would go like this. In the morning, the father would be outside in the garden. The elderly person would come and they would talk. And then when he leaves, the father would say, okay, my daughter, now repeat. And she would repeat everything. So she got used to this habit of really remembering everything. Then one day, the father asked her, I want you to now repeat. And she repeated. And he said, did you hear his heart? She said, what do you mean? He said, did you hear his heart? You heard his words, but did you hear his heart? And she didn't get it. And the next day, her father gave her a newspaper. And she read it. And he said, what did it say? And she said the words. He said, but did you read between the lines? And then she understood. She said, maybe there's something deeper that I have to listen to, that I have to hear. And so the following morning, the elderly neighbor came again and they talked, him and the father, and he left. And the father asked the young girl, did you hear his heart? And she said, I heard that he's very lonely in his place and he lives on his own. And that's why every morning he comes to speak with you, because he wants someone to talk to. And her father said, now you heard. This is the first time that you've actually heard, because you listened. So this is what happens to us in life. So many times we engage in so many conversations, we do so many things with people, we hear what they say, but we don't hear their heart. We read the words, but we don't read between the lines. We look into their faces, but we don't see what's beyond their eyes. We lack that gift of attention. If we just pay little more attention, we can do wonders. We can feel heartbeats. We can feel emotions and thoughts, and we can feel their being. So this avadhanam is not only for our spiritual practice, to pay attention to our thoughts, to our things that we do, but also to others. Guru avadhana. In fact, life is just this much. Pay attention. Everything is already there. Whatever we need is already right in front of us. Vatulakim tavanasti niyanta. We saw in verse 11 of Bhaja Govindam, we never ever need to worry, because actually everything we need is here. It's there. It's in front of us. But we just need to pay attention to it. So Guru avadhana, mahad avadhana, with great care. Now, somebody might say, Adi Shankaracharya ji, now you said so many things in Bhaja Govindam, but please just tell me one thing. I don't know if I can remember all of the verses. Just tell me one thing and that I can take away. What's the one takeaway? So now he concludes with this verse 31. Guru Charana Bhuja Nirbhara Bhaktaha.
Guru Charanabjut Nirbhara Bhakta.
Samsarada Chirad Bhava Muktaha.
Sansarada Chiradva Mukta.
Tendriya Manasa Niyamadevam.
Sendriyamanasaniyamadevam.
Rakshasi Nija Hridayastham Devam.
Drashyasi nijaradayastamadevam.
Guru Charana Bhuja Nirbhara Bhakta. Samsarada Chirad Bhava Mukta. Sendriya Manasa Niyamadevam. Drakshasi Nija Hridayastham Devam. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate. Okay, here, so this is the last verse of Bhaja Govindam. What does it say? Verse number 31. Guru Charanam Bhuja Nirbhara Bhaktaha. that great devotee of the lotus feet of the teacher, samsarat achirat bhavamuktaha. May you be liberated samsarat, from samsara achirat, very soon. Sendriya manasa niyamat. How? Through the discipline of the mind and sense organs. Evam, in this manner, drakshasi, you will experience nija hridayastham devam, that Lord devam, which dwells in your own heart. Nija hridayastham devam. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam, Bhaja Mudhamate. O devotee of the lotus feet of the teacher, may you become liberated soon from the samsara through the discipline of the sense organs and mind. You will come to experience the Lord that dwells in your own heart. This is a very beautiful verse. If we cannot do all of the things that Adi Shankaracharya ji prescribed, he says, just surrender to the feet of the Guru. That's it. Just surrender to the feet of the Guru and say, you guide me, you direct me, you will lead me, because I don't know what to do. And Puja Gurudev says the Guru will tell us, will teach us about who we are. And maybe we might not even really understand it. Many times when we are told that we are Atman, we are the self, we are pure awareness and consciousness, maybe we can't understand it. Maybe it's hard to see. Maybe we're not able to come to terms with it. But what he says is just hold that belief. Just keep holding it. Just hold it. And eventually that belief will turn into faith. So just stay at the feet of Guru. Guru is one who removes our ignorance. If we don't have a form of Guru, a form of God, Goddess, hold their feet. Just hold their feet and stay there. And let that belief blossom into faith. That surrender, that trust in God can do wonders for us. And he says here, if we do that, samsarad achirad bhavamuktaha. Who else is that Guru? Guru is not only the one who removes ignorance, but Guru is the one who has one sole desire for the student. May you be liberated soon. That's called Guru. Guru is somebody who only seeks for our evolution and evolvement in this world, nothing else. And what does the Guru do? So the Guru tells us or gives us a program by which we can discipline our senses and our mind through sadhana. So the Guru will say, do japana, do japa, do seva, do this sadhana, do this and do that. Give us that kind of practice by which all of our senses, all of our mind can be disciplined and pointed into one goal. That's it. And with this sadhana, what will happen? We will be able to then realize the self. So even if we cannot do anything that Bhaja Govindam says, even if we forget everything that Bhaja Govindam says, Guru Charanam Bhujanir Bhara Bhakta. Just hold on to the feet of Guru, feet of God. Because Bhagavan, Guru's only wish is that may we be liberated. And they will give us this sadhana to be disciplined through. And by which we can see that truth in our very own selves. And that is the purpose of religion. The purpose of religion is to groom that mind and purify that mind so that it becomes incredibly sharp and subtle, that we can perceive who we truly are. And that is the essence of Bhaja Govindam. Bhaja Govindam, Govindam, Bhaja Mudhamate. So now, what I'm going to do is I will take you through, in whatever remaining time we have, I'll try to do it, take you through the entire journey of Bhaja Govindam, from verse 1 to 31, to really see what Adi Shankaracharya ji has given to us. This is a very, very beautiful text because it hits us. Every verse hits us in a different way. And the message of each verse is to Bhaja Govinda, seek God, seek that truth within. And not wait, but seek that truth now, because we never know what's going to happen. And this is structured in such a way that the first verse is the refrain, Bhaja Govindam. Verses 2 to 13 is Adi Shankaracharya ji. Verses 14 to 27 is all of his disciples were so inspired by him. They also started chanting. Verses 28 to 31, again, Adi Shankaracharya ji ties the whole thing together. So with whatever time we have left, let's see how much we can go through this review. All right. Bhaja Govinda. So seek Govinda. We started with verse 1, which tells us evolve, don't revolve, because pursuing moksha is an urgency. It's not something that can wait. In fact, moksha is the purpose of life. We might do so many things in life, seek pleasure and wealth and relationships and all of these things. But if we don't seek the truth, we have missed out. We have missed life. So the first verse says, evolve, don't revolve. Seek that which is the purpose of life. The next verse tells us to move from greed to need. We get stuck in craving and wanting and wishing and hoping. Instead, here, Adi Shankaracharya ji says, live by what we receive, live contently with what we receive, and strive to give back more. Strive to give, to serve society more. The third verse, he asks us to go beyond lust, go beyond the body, where in times where we're so used to seeing things that make people's bodies appear like objects. Adi Shankaracharya ji says that's not what it is. Every being, every body is sacred. And every relationship with someone is only to bring us or to take us to the relationship with the higher. So every commitment, every marriage, every relationship is really to take us to the relationship with God. So go beyond that bodily lust. Then in verse number 4, he says that uncertainty is certain. We might want to delay seeking the truth and feel like we can do it at a later stage in life. He says, no, we never know what's going to happen. Life is uncertain. We don't know what the next minute is. We have no idea. The 5th verse, he says, drop the world before the world drops you. This doesn't mean dropping people and things. It means dropping the dependence on them. Drop the dependence on others, because what happens is others will eventually move out of our lives. Some way or the other, they will move out of our lives. At the end of the day, we walk alone. So when we drop our dependence on other people and our attachment to other people, it becomes easier for us to live. Every body dies and nobody dies. So the body is called Sharira. Sharira, why? Because it decays. So the Sanskrit word for body is Sharira, Shiryamanatvat, that which decays. The body will decay. The body will die. The body will grow old. This will happen. And this is a very, very painful thing. So what do we do with our body while it's here? Nourish it. And as I had told the children in the assembly, the body is to be nourished to help us to serve others and seek further. There's no other purpose for the body. It has no other worth than to serve and to seek. And in verse 7, we learn that seeking is a priority. Don't think that we can wait till the next stage. In childhood, the mind is distracted by toys. In youth, it's distracted by lust. In old age is distracted by worry. At every stage, the mind gets distracted. Therefore, seek at every single stage and let the seeker melt into the salt. We tend to get caught in family and we think that the purpose of life is to have and raise a family. It is not. Family is not the final destination. It is just a field of purification. In order to go inward, as what we talked about, we need to purify our minds. And one beautiful way of purifying our minds and hearts is through being in a family. Because there's a lot of likes and dislikes that we get rid of, a lot of selfishness we get rid of. Our ego individuality shrinks because we cannot think about ourselves. All of these things happen when we are in the family, and that's meant to happen because it's a field of purification, but it is not the final destination. In verse 9, we learned about the power of satsanga. This will keep us inspired and energized. Whenever we're attached to company with the good, it will take us to goodness, to God. But when we are away from it, we tend to forget things and we tend to forget how to live a divine life. In verse 10, we learned that ignorance is the root cause of all of the suffering. If we're wondering why do we feel this way, why are we bogged down, it is because we are identifying with the body, the mind, intellect, the ego. The minute we identify with the ego, we will feel everything that the ego feels. But in reality, we are not the ego. We are the mere witness. That's sakshi. In verse number 11, this too shall pass. It says here not to take so much pride in all of the possessions that we have, not to even worry about everything that we have, because everything will pass. It's just a matter of time. But how do we use our time? In verse 12, it says, use your time to climb. Right? Every single moment is for evolution. Every single thing that we do is to go inward. So this world is not for pleasure or enjoyment. It's a field. The scene is not to be lost in the scene, to go to the seer. The creation is not meant to be lost in the creation, but to get to the creator. So everything is really to connect or to get to the source. Here it says that worry is an insult to God. So whenever we worry, we're insulting God because there's a cosmic intelligence who knows what should happen to whom, when, where, and how. It's based on the law of karma. And when we keep thinking or worrying about it, we're insulting that intelligence. God knows best, and let that happen. The only thing we can do, we should do, is to surrender. To surrender. Verse 14, we saw about the various people who fake perfection. They wear certain uniforms and robes, and they fake this perfection, fake that they are actually that which they are wearing. People in the garb of a sannyasin, people in the garb of a police or a lawyer, people in the garb of a teacher. Sometimes people fake what they're wearing or fake their personalities. But here it says, live with sincerity. It doesn't matter if we're not perfect, because life is really between us and God. As long as we are sincere, we will go far. And that's also what happened to Arjuna. Arjuna, the warrior hero, he broke down and he was so honest about it. And because he was so honest about him breaking down and he surrendered to Sri Krishna, he got the Bhagavad Gita. The 15th verse is telling us to desire to be desireless. Here in the 15th verse, it paints a picture of somebody who's old. Their teeth are falling out, their hair is gone, they can't even walk, but still they have desires for the world. So here it tells us live life in such a way that we age gracefully, that all of these desires are out of our hearts and that only the name of God stays in. Verse number 16 paints for us a picture of one who's pretending that they have given up everything, pretending that they don't have desires anymore. So they live by the fire, they take bhiksha with their hands, they live a simple life, but inside they're burning with desire. So here, it's not just about giving up and living simply, but it's really about growing up. Spirituality is not indulgence or denial, it's an unfoldment. And we learn that in verse 17, where it says, knowledge means know the edge. So in verse 17, it gives us a beautiful program of how to purify the mind and the intellect. With going on a pilgrimage, taking a vow, giving charity, etc. And of course, coming to the truth of who we are. Verse number 18 talks about how to have bliss or joy in this world. And that's through cultivating vairagya. Vairagya again means being independent of people, of places, of things, of experiences for our sense of happiness. When we are independent of everybody for our sense of happiness, we can really, really rejoice. So independence is joy. In verse number 19, we get a picture of the Jivan Mukta. Who's one who's liberated and living in this world? They are a true wonder. Why? Because they can be with or without. They are wow. They can be with people, without people. They can be with things, without things. This is somebody who's truly free and not dependent on anything. In verse number 20, we learn how a little goes a long way. We have maybe studied so many things, listened to so many lectures, but in reality, we can only practice what we remember. So it says here, Bhagavad Gita, kinchit adita, even if we study just a little bit, but take that to heart and use that to transform. So read maybe less, but reflect more, because we can only practice what we reflect on and what we remember. Verse 21 is about what if we don't get this knowledge here and now? What if we fail? Then punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. Again, we have to go through this cycle of birth and death. So sometimes we fail to even see that we are bound. We fail to even see that we are in bondage. And so we have to go through this cycle again and again and again. So this verse is really telling us, isn't it time? Isn't it time to want to break free from this samsara? How much more samsara can we take? Do we still really need more? This is what this verse makes us think about. Verse number 22 talks about somebody who has gotten out of this samsara, broken free from this cycle. And what are they? They are somebody who just keeps giving. Their life becomes a life of giving in everything and in every relationship, in every experience. They give more than they take. And they roam about life like a mad person, like a child, free from worry, free from tension, and just simply living. Why are they this way? Why is a self-realized person like a child and free? Because they realize that life is but a dream. In verse 23, we saw that this whole waking world, this whole waker, is nothing but an illusion upon that consciousness, upon that awareness. And therefore, leaving or letting go of the reality of the world and everything in it, letting go of the reality of the ego, one is able to live in peace. And because of that, in verse 24, we see that this being is able to see that oneness in everyone. Everything is just consciousness appearing as name and form. So everyone is the same one, the same truth. And here in verse 24, it says, Bhava samatva, to bhava samachitta, to stay equanimous. Amidst all the changes in life, stay equanimous, because everything is just an appearance of a wave. The truth is water. Waves appear up and down, but really the truth is water. So one who goes down to the water and stays in the depth of it is able to stay centered in this truth. In verse 25, it says that at the end of the day, we all have to walk alone. Sometimes we put so much unnecessary effort to make friends, to make all these relationships, which are so incredibly superficial. And we put so much effort to stay away from enemies, and we go through life like this. But here it says, instead of doing all of that, make your mind your best friend. Make your mind your best friend, because your mind is with you all along, 24/7. Your mind is with you. And at the end of the day, you and I have to walk alone. We came alone. When we came out of our mother's womb, we came out alone. And when we die, we will also die alone. So walk alone, because we are alone. Verse number 26. What prevents us from living up to this truth is because of the 6 gangsters. 6 gangsters start from desire, selfish desire, kama. When we don't get that, krodha, we become angry. And if inevitably somebody else gets it, matsarya, we become jealous, jealousy. And if we get what we want, we become greedy, lobha, greed. And we also become proud. So we have pride, mada. And in and through this, we have moha. We lose our sense of discrimination. We lose our sense of thinking. So to get to this state of peace, we have to face these 6 gangsters, starting from selfish desire. How do we purify ourselves? So very beautifully here, it says mental health is spiritual wealth. It can be as simple as Gayam Gita, chanting the Gita, contemplating on the form of the Lord, leading the mind to satsang, and giving of charity. So keeping our mind in all of these beautiful practices. And in verse 28, tells us again, invest our time wisely, because our present creates our future. So everything that we're doing here, if we dedicate it to the higher, then we're reaching. We are on our way to reaching the truth. But if we're just doing it selfishly for our own gain, then we're going away from the truth. So it could be the same action. If it's dedicated or done with an attitude towards the higher, it will take us further. If it's done with a selfish attitude, it'll take us lower. So think about our present and how that creates our future. Verse 29, we see that wealth is for dharma. So the minute we lose this connection, we lose the purpose of wealth. Wealth is not just to enjoy and to go out and do whatever we want with it. Wealth is actually to live our dharma, to live our life in a righteous way, so that eventually this desire for liberation will come. And therefore, we will realize who we are. So that wealth is to take us to the realization of the self. Everything is to take us to the realization of the self. If it takes us away from it, then it's not worth it. Verse 30, which we just did today, is spiritual progress is an inward journey. So about going inward through physical introversion, pranayama pratyahara, then mental introversion, japa, and then intellectual introversion, nitya nitya viveka vichara, that culminates in samadhi. And if we forget, what are we supposed to do? We forget the whole Bhaja Govindam. Just give me one quick tip. Surrender. Guru Charanam Bhuja Nirbhara Bhaktaha. If we stay under the guidance of the Guru, we will walk and we will evolve faster. Surrender. Hold on to that belief until it becomes faith. And so this is the whole Bhaja Govindam. I hope that all of us got something valuable from it. We'll just chant the first verse together to show that this is a circle. The study is a circle. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate, Samprapte Sandhite Kale, Nahi Nahi Rakshati Rukrin Karani, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate. I'll pause here to see if anyone has questions. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Offer gratitude to Puja Gurudev and to Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya Ji for giving us this opportunity to reflect on Bhaja Govindam, and to all of you also. Thank you. We'll see you in person next week.
Thank you, Shubhalini. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Hari Om.